fill your thirst beside the river. Wash the journey from your hands. Feel the comfort flow inside you. Come this far, you understand. Fear's not allowed, where dreams can be lost or found.
Hi, welcome to Healing Outside the Box. I'm Rosemary Lachance, a Reiki energy healer and a spiritual advisor.
And I'm Jayne Power, author, angel channeler, and owner of an organic hair salon in Clinton, Connecticut.
And we are dedicated to providing you with food for thought information and answers to all modalities of alternative healing, spiritual welfare, animal welfare, environmental concerns, and so much more in the form of guest speakers who are experts in their fields. We ask you to embrace the show with an open mind. We will give you our contact information at the end of the show. And we'd love to hear any show ideas that you may have for us, or anyone that you know that would be very good to be on our show. So enjoy the show. And tonight is our 99th show.
Wow.
Wow.
And we have with us tonight
Woody Wilkins. Okay, I'm going to read this.
Yep. I'm going to
Okay.
read a little bit about Woody for you.
Alrighty. I don't have the right glasses on today, so bear with me. Okay, Woody Wilkins is the founder and executive director of Dances with Wolves, a program. Oh, Dances with Wolves.
With
How
wolves.
did you like that one?
See?
You're barking up the wrong
Okay,
tree.
Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
A program for creative empowerment serving hospitalized children with serious illnesses. At the core of the program are woodworking kits that Woody has manufactured for children who must spend weeks or even months in the hospital for treatment. All of the wooden pieces in the kits are pre-cut, sanded, and ready for assembly, requiring no fuss or sharp objects. Children can work on these constructions while sitting or lying in a hospital bed and create all sorts of objects, like a boat, a box, a race car. Each kit with a set of tools and paints, along with a workbook that provides step-by-step instructions on how to build the project. The Dances with Wood program gives children a chance to have fun and forget about their illness for a while. In 2002, Woody started an offshoot of Dances with Wood called Dream Builders, a healthcare, education, and creative arts curriculum for children with hemophilia.
Okay.
Go
ahead.
I'll read this one last part.
Yep.
Woody Wilkins has received the Surgeon General's Certificate of Appreciation in recognition of his extraordinary effort on behalf of the children of this nation. He also received the National Hemophilia Foundation's 2005 Award for Distinction in Health Education Programs for his innovative Dream Builders program. The wolf thing just went through my head again. Sorry.
Okay. So
Hi,
we
Woody.
welcome Woody
Nice to
Wilkins.
meet you.
Hello. Thank you for
Hi.
coming so much. Okay. So the first question that we ask our guests is, what made you get into this field?
What
work?
made me get into this field, it was
work.
essentially a feeling,
Mhm.
you know, and it was something that comes from an inner place. It's the question really is, how do you navigate your life, with your head or your heart?
Mhm.
So really what brought me into this work was a feeling inside.
In your
and
heart.
connected to creativity, yeah.
Mhm.
So it was very much a desire to stay in touch with that part of me, and that ultimately is what led me to this work.
Okay. So were you born here in the States? Where were you born?
Yeah, I don't. My accent suggests I
Yes.
wasn't actually born in
Okay.
America. Yeah,
Was in Wales, I think you
proud
said, right?
to say I'm a Welshman. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And you want to tell us a little bit about your background?
Starting.
You said when you were 10, health concerns moved your family to the England's West Country. Your health concerns for you?
Yeah, as a child, I wasn't a healthy child, which meant as a result, I went to doctor's visits and hospitals quite often.
Mhm.
And if you look at what helped navigate our lives, those early influences were very strong for me, because when you come out of a doctor's office, you know, it's one of the things my mother always did for me. She bought me a coloring book. So I'd go home and I'd use art to help bring me back to a place of who I was as a child. And then I'd go out in the garden and I'd have an old hammer and I'd pound on a log, because creativity for me as a child was the access back to that kingdom within me. And that's really the beginnings of this work.
That's right. My mother used to buy me color books too. Whenever I was sick or in the doctor. You're right. Just remembered that. She'll love to do that. We ask you these questions because there are people out there who might have had a calling like yourself, you know, and people who don't know what to do with it, and you know, and they can identify with you. So that's why we ask you a little bit about your background and how you got started. So it says here that you continued in college in the UK and you began woodworking ventures at an apprentice cabinet maker.
Yep.
Eventually passing the City and Guilds of London's Institute, full trade qualifications, and ascending to the level of master cabinet maker. That's great. So a little bit more. In your early 20s, what did you trained as an industrial engineer and worked that role for about 4 years? These are all the things that you told us. All right, so what does Dances for Wood do for a child with serious illness?
It provides an experience where a child actually is allowed to do two things. One is they're allowed to reach for their potential. And secondly, it actually reveals to them the beauty of who they are. And both of those experiences come together with a very, very great amount of power inside the child. So we're helping a child to see who they are, which is beautiful and healthy, and we're showing them what they can actually achieve, which often is beyond what they perceive they can achieve, especially being in a hospital.
Right. Right.
So how did the children accept this kind of work from you when you first started doing it? How did you get them to do this? What was your approach?
Kids are kids. You know, you
Yeah.
look at your own childhood, you look at what works for a child, and kids are very wise these days. They have quick sound bites of terms of what they look at, and so you have to present a program with the right approach to a child. And that usually isn't me trying to talk them into it.
It's not you.
No.
So you're not one-on-one with the kids. You have people that work for you.
Oh no, when I started I was one-on-one with the children, but if you want to engage a child's creativity, you know, it's the visual thing, so that you allow them to see what it is that they can actually build. So if there's a boy in a hospital, you show him a race car, that'll be the meeting ground where you can actually commune through the race car, and that's like a safe zone. So the creativity is stimulated by, it's the show and tell, really. And that's really what does the work.
Did they like gather them together in a room and then you spoke with them and told them all about this, or did you go one-on-one with everyone?
No, mostly one-on-one.
One-on-one?
You know, there were a lot of health constrictions, and many of the children that I worked with had serious illnesses, so sometimes they'd be in isolation. And you do what's ever normal when you hang out with a child. You know, I think the thing to remember is, my perception is these kids aren't sick in the context of these kids are healthy children, but they're in bodies that have a sickness.
Right.
You know, so when you walk in a room,
Exactly.
they're just kids. And you do whatever you do with kids, and they respond to that.
That's really great. And you focused on the children because you had these problems when you were a child. Rather than go to adults, you went to the children.
Again, when you navigate your life, you have to listen for what speaks to your emotions and your feelings. And I think there were some experiences for me in my life that really showed me that working with children with a serious illness had a very strong feeling for me. And that's how I kind of navigated my life, following that.
So what were the initial challenges you faced when you started the program?
There's probably two sets of challenges. One is the interior challenges, and then the exterior challenges. So the interior challenge is when you have an idea or a dream that you feel strongly about, then you have to allow yourself to really fall in love with that. Because often there isn't an invitation from the world to say, come and do this, because often it's never been done before.
Right.
So the first part of the challenge is really allowing yourself to fall in love with it as it is, and not have your own negativity push it away because it isn't something that people say, oh, let's do this. It's like they go, what are you gonna do? You're gonna work with woodworking in hospitals, and you have to really have a strong connection to the love you have for that original vision. And that really is the driving force. And then beyond that, the second level of challenge is how do you bring it into the world then? How do you make it work on a nuts and bolts level?
Right.
And actually apply it too, so it doesn't remain like a good idea or a dream that lives in you forever but never has birth. So the key then is you have to really be very practical in how you take it into the world.
Right.
So there's two sets of challenges, and then obviously with the second set of challenges, is a program like this, how do you then introduce it to a hospital? How do you get funding for it? Things of that nature.
All that.
Exactly.
How were you received when you brought the idea to the hospital?
Yeah, it was a curious response. You know,
Really?
I remember them.
What are you, crazy?
Yeah, I had a meeting with a wonderful administrator probably 15 years ago who was a nice lady, very good at her job, and she's looking at me as if I'm from another planet. And she said, but the children upstairs, she said, they're sick, they're in bed, there isn't a wood shop up there. I said, okay. You know, and the actual idea of using woodworking was really outside the box.
Right.
Yeah.
Very outside the box. And then you really have to follow your heart and find ways then to incrementally introduce it into a culture that is a very caring, driven, high-speed culture. And you have to, you know, really learn how to respect that, and then you look for how you bring it into a sort of vibrational balance so it can actually function. And then you go through all health and safety protocols. I spent 3 months in the early days going through health and safety protocols.
Wow.
Yeah, I met with 9, 10 departments who all had to vet the tools, the screws, the processes, and everything. It's very intense.
Everything had to be a certain amount of sanitary, right?
Yeah.
To be-
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, why did you call the program Dancing with Wolves?
Woods.
Why do
You
I
and
wa-
your
where- What
wolves.
is it
I
with the
don't know.
wolves?
She's having a good time with this, isn't she? Yeah.
She's playing it out.
Well, actually, I can save you with this because the actual name originates. I was in a sauna 20 years ago up in Maine, and there were other people in the sauna, and we were talking about this, and they said, "Well, Dances with Wolves, Dances with Wood. Why don't you call it Dances with Wood?"
Oh, wow.
So it's okay to,
Okay,
to
thank you.
connect
There you
it to
go.
that.
Saved.
But essentially, when you look at what it does, you know, the word wood is very obvious, and with wood. But the dance, what is the dance?
Right as a dance, yeah.
Yeah, and I think working with children in a creative sense, it really is a dance. Sometimes I lead, sometimes they lead,
Right.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
and there's a rhythm.
Yeah.
And the rhythm that we dance to it's like the creative rhythm. It's like a music. And once you see a child start creating something, it's like a
Beautiful
beautiful
thing.
dance. Yeah, it's a wonderful dance. And you know that there's this, in the silence of that, there's almost like an ethereal music going on. So Dances with Wood is, and it's also a name that's a bit quirky. It's not
It is.
it's not therapeutic woodworking or anything like that.
Right, right.
And so kids go,
This is nice. It's light.
Yeah.
It's pretty. It's a nice title.
and people ask me, they say, "What do you do for a living?" I say, "I'm a dancer." And they usually step back, and I can tell they're thinking, "Well, he's no
Fred
spring,
Astaire, maybe.
he's no spring chicken to be a dancer. This guy, you know."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So then I further explain that I dance with wood, and they get further confused. So then I say, "Go to the website." And
Yeah. I'll explain it right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Oh,
How did the children receive it in the beginning?
loved
Were
it.
they excited,
Oh,
huh?
yeah. Couldn't get
Really?
enough of it. Yeah.
Okay. And there's some stories you had told me that I was going to ask you to tell our audience, but let me see. You mentioned that this program heals and restores the spirit.
Mm.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you take cancer as an illness, for example, you know, we see it as initially as a physical illness. But essentially, from my perspective, there's two levels to the illness. There is a physical illness, but there's also a form of illness that affects the spirit within the body.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
that's the psychological and the spiritual side of the child. And it's the worry, the stress, the negativity, and the diminishment that occurs for the spirit. And I think this is with adults as well. So the key in how you approach cancer, as we know now more than ever, the correlation between the actual body and the thoughts and the emotions are very powerful, and they're very interlinked. So the importance of focusing on the actual spirit, which this program does, really supports and helps to really empower the healing process that goes on within the body. So what it does, because if you imagine a hospital when somebody's dealing with cancer, you know, and I've been in hospital many times, and you kind of withdraw, you know, and a child often will go to what I call the inner kingdom. And I think most of us do when we're threatened. And then the question is, they're in that safe modality, but they're very withdrawn. And so the question then is, how do you invite them then, in the context of safety, to come back out and to be a child again? And that's really what the program's designed to do. It allows them to use their own creativity. The program doesn't actually do it. What the program does, it creates like a setting and an invitation and great support. And when a child feels safe, it's a bit like a bud. If you get a bud in a rose and it's very tight, if you try and peel the layers back, you usually break them. And when a child's in a hospital,
that's a good analogy, yeah.
you can't say, you know, you're going to do this, because it really doesn't matter. But why does a rose open? You know, when the sun shines on the rose opens. So this is meant as an affirming invitation to a child to play and create in the context of challenge, but success as well. And that process of actually engaging in something with your hands, with your mind, using your will force as well, which is really important, to engage your will. So when you use tools, you're activating your will force. And that's part of the essential need that anybody has if you're going to reclaim your health. Because without your will force, ain't a lot going to happen.
It's true.
Exactly.
A lot ain't going to happen, rather. So the process is designed to help a child come back into their sort of power state, which is their creative state, which is, and in that process, it helps heal and restores the spirit. And it displaces a lot of the fear. You know, as we know, that cancer isn't just an illness that a child has. You know, the implications of cancer for most people, and I've been there myself with this, the implications of it can last a lifetime. And so it's very important to actually address those fears and those insecurities at the time by providing them with a positive, meaningful experience. So they end up with a memory that's connected to something beautiful and powerful that occurred actually in a hospital.
Right.
And then because it's built out of wood, it's very permanent.
Now, do you encourage the parents to get involved with this, or is the child doing this project on their own?
You have to stay very loose in that scenario. You know, there's always different relationships. Sometimes children don't always have parents with them, so that's fine. From an ideal perspective, I like the parents to really enjoy themselves and relax and perhaps observe and watch their child really access something very powerful within them. Often parents say, wow, I had no idea that they had that amount of energy, or they could actually do that. The parents end up surprised. But some parents really want to participate, and I think it's great. Painting, often they get enlisted to wash the paintbrushes and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, and younger children too, you know, you ask, well, what age can a child start doing this? I have 4-year-olds doing this, but it's sitting on the lap of the parent, and the parent's guiding it, and so there's a wonderful interaction going on, and the parent is given something meaningful, and at the end of it, they end up with this beautiful treasure. It becomes a treasure.
It does.
Exactly.
It does.
Yeah.
Can you please share with us some of the turning points in your adult life that brought you to this path?
There was an elderly friend of mine. He was 80 plus, and I've known him for many years, and I went to see him one day, and he shared with me, he said, I'm really tired. He said, I'm not sure I'm going to really live much longer, which was a sad thing to hear, but also a beautiful thing that he trusted me with that. So I said to him, Bill, is there anything that you'd like to actually do that you haven't done? He said, I want to go to a spiritual church. And in England, we have these things called spiritual churches.
Right.
And again, it depends on your belief system. It's, you know,
We've got them here too.
yeah, there's a lot more of them over there.
Really?
So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so he dressed up in a suit. 2 days later, I took him to a spiritualist church. He'd lost his mother 30 years before this, and he always felt a connection to her, and he wanted to have a connection to her in spirit. Again, it depends on your own belief system. So I took him to the spiritualist church. We have a 20-minute Christian service, and then they have what they call a medium who comes in and she actually brings down spirit and communicates from their loved one. Again, it's individual belief systems
Yeah,
here.
that's fine. You know.
And Bill had this message from his mother. He was glowing. it was lovely to feel him glowing in that way. And then afterwards we're sitting having tea, as we tend to do in England. So we're both sitting next to each other drinking tea, and this little lady walks across, 4'6", and she turns at me and she points. She says, "You're going to be very sick if you don't change your work." And she took off.
Said that to you?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I'm sitting with Bill, and it's like,
And what
What
kind
were
of
you,
work
what were you doing
at the
then?
time?
Yeah.
well, I was managing director of a trading company.
Oh, okay.
We were marketing and selling leisure footwear.
Okay.
In quite a, so I was in a sort of a corporate position.
Now, where does the cabinetry come in?
That, well, he's
Yeah.
going
Is
to tell
that
us that, yeah.
afterwards? Okay.
I wanted to ask that question
The
after.
tapestry of my life has many different pieces.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay,
so there's
okay.
many different pieces to this, but that was
Let's
the
start with
zone
that
that I
one, yeah.
worked in for several years. You know, sometimes you go through life, you do a lot of different jobs, and at some point you realize that every job has been preparing you for
Yep.
something.
Exactly.
So I had to spend 2 years, I had a suit for every day of the week, I had a company car, you know, and everybody thought, wow, he's kind of made it.
Yeah, he's
Right.
made
You
it
know,
a success, yeah.
And my life was like an apple pie, beautiful pastry, no filling. I was empty inside. It was like where did Woody go? And there was something really missing. And you know, everybody thought I was fine, but I wasn't inside. There was something inside that wasn't alive, but I was functioning and doing what everybody thought I should be doing. And when she said that, she just nailed it. Anyway, so I tracked this lady down. I went to see her. She allowed me very gracefully to go and have a meeting with her. And she looked at me and said, here's how it works. I get a message. I'm like a postman. I deliver it. I don't remember you. I don't remember what I said. And I have no idea what you're supposed to do with it. It's for you to determine. And I then, shortly after that, I gave 6 months' notice.
Wow.
Really?
I knew I had to set this free because I was
This is
dying
great.
inside.
This is great.
6 months. I only needed to give 3, but the chairman was a personal friend. I want to get somebody recruited, get him trained, get it all set up for you. 6 months notice. I had no idea what I was going to do.
You took a leap of faith.
I
Yeah.
had no idea what I was going to do. This is the feng shui of transitioning.
Yeah.
And when you leave something, you leave it well. You leave it with integrity. You leave it
Right.
consciously.
Right.
And in the process of doing that, you create like an energetic invitation for the next piece to emerge. So,
Had no idea what you were going to do.
no
you
idea
just,
whatsoever.
Wow.
Just you had that little lady sitting on your shoulder.
That was very powerful.
wonderful.
That was like the touch on the forehead.
That's great to share with the audience.
So I'm 5.5 months into this notice period, and my friends are looking at me as if
You're
this
nuts.
guy's lost it. It's like, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know, but I know I will know. I just knew I would know, and this knew.
A leap of
This
faith.
sometimes got a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge in how we navigate life. How do you get your head and your heart to synchronize? One of the things I was doing also, I was volunteering one night a week with young mentally handicapped adults, about 14 to 15-year-olds. Friday night would come along, I'd take my suit off, put some more clothes on, I'd drive into this institution. We had institutions then. And I'd sit with 10 handicapped young adults. They'd be Down syndrome, they'd be head bashers, they'd be deaf, they'd be blind, spastic. All I knew is when I was with these people, I felt so at home.
Really?
My heart felt, I just like these people. I love being here.
Yeah.
Nobody really knew I was doing this. I'd go into work on a Monday, there'd be BMWs outside, and everybody would be running around and doing, you know, the thing that they do.
Yeah.
And there was a part of me that just was not there. I found it with these beautiful, beautiful young people. And so then the question was 5.5 months into this notice period, I got 2 weeks to go. So I get a phone call from this organization. They said, would you come and see us? So I'm sitting in the garden with the director. He said, we need a care assistant.
A care assistant.
A care assistant.
This is at the place that you were volunteering.
Yeah, this is with the
Okay.
mentally handicapped, the home for the mentally handicapped. It's the lowest paid position, I think, in the entire country. My job was to wash them, to feed them, and to break up fights.
Oh, wow. That's not
I
easy.
had to work 3 weekends out of 4,
Oh.
work till 10 o'clock Saturday night. I was on call through the night and start 8 o'clock Sunday morning.
Oh, my God.
I had to be residential. They had no room in the house for me. They had a mobile home out the back, like a caravan. No electricity, no running water. That was where I
That
had to
sounds
live.
like a dream job.
I'm sitting in the garden and I can feel it now. And he was telling me about this. And my head was like going off with fireworks, going, oh, what is this? You're doing what? My heart was going, yes, this is the next piece. This is so right on.
Yeah.
So I gave the company car back, and I moved into this caravan, put an extension lead in for lights, and it was one of the most magical things I've done in my entire life. It was like a homecoming,
Yeah.
you know.
Amazing.
It's a bit
That's
like I was
amazing.
driving along fields, and all of a sudden I found I-95. Oh, this is a highway. I'd been all over the place.
Wow.
Then I had direction. So I began as this care assistant, and I fell in love with these young people. They were teachers, very wise teachers. And they had a wood shop there. But the person who ran the wood shop actually was the father of one of the boys, and he'd been there since it opened, and he was going to be there forever. After 3 months, he decided to leave with his son and go back up north. So they said, would I run the wood shop? Before this, I'd actually taught in college. I did my teacher training in college. So I used to teach in college as well, cabinet making, carpentry, and joining.
You did. I was going to ask you about
Okay.
your background in woodworking. Yeah.
So I'd been in a college environment. I didn't quite fit. I respected it, but it wasn't, it just wasn't a right fit for me. And this here is a wood carving, and this is what I always loved to do. It began when I was just a child in the garden. And when I trained as a cabinet maker, I was always told by the guys used to say, you're wasting your time doing this. You should make kitchens, make cabinets. You're never going to make any money doing this.
Hold it up straight so they can
Yep.
take a good look at it. And get a
So
close up on that.
What kind of wood is this?
it's a basswood, softwood.
Beautiful.
But the value of this is
Wow.
that when I was a child, there was that impulse to create, which kept coming up. It began with a log, wood carving. So here I am being trained as a cabinet maker, being told by everybody I'm wasting my time doing wood carving.
Right.
It has no value for anybody. Okay. Again, you don't always listen to the messages you get. So here I am now being invited to run this wood shop for these profoundly handicapped young people. They cannot cut a straight line, and they can't read a drawing. Guess what they can do? They can wood carve. I built a bench in the woods, and we used to carve with them.
Wow.
And they built lamps for their bedrooms.
Wow.
So if you look at the journey
Yes, to
of,
see how everything.
you track it. And so this came back into my life, and what this represents really is a sense of connection to a creative pulse. And I think it's in every human being. For some of us it's stronger, for some of it's less, but it's in everybody, and everybody has it. The question is, how do we help each other to really be in touch with it and to live it, which I think is a big challenge.
Well, the biggest thing is this world makes everyone stay so busy.
Yeah.
So busy just trying to keep
Right.
their head above water and make money, and they don't have
Right.
time to tap into that. Even though they,
Yep.
I've heard
I'm
many
one of
people
them.
say, there's something missing in my life.
Yeah.
There's something missing. I had a client today that said that there's something missing, and
Right.
I know that feeling. That's why I started my journey. So
Right.
I know exactly what you're talking about. But this is what happens. So many of you
Right.
people out there want to do this kind of thing, but sometimes you have to give up something to get
Well,
something.
Fear keeps us from
And
not doing it.
that's what he did.
Nice point. So here I am now in this situation, actually teaching wood carving to these lovely young adults. During this time as well, I started studying Waldorf education, Rudolf Steiner, and that was a philosophy about life, about people, about education, and it gave me a bigger perspective on the whole world of teaching. The other experience that occurred for me a few months prior to this, I was in a bookstore in London. And it was in between meetings. It's Foyle's bookstore, and I love to go to bookstores. So I'm in a bookstore, and there was this bargain basement. So I'm wandering around the bargain basement, and this book kind of jumped at me, and it kind of attracted my hand. And it was a book by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross,
Oh yeah.
a book called To Live Until You Say Goodbye, which isn't the kind of title that you would usually pick up. So I picked up this book, and I couldn't put it down, so I took it home. And it was a series of black and white essays about the end of life for adults and children. And I read this one story about this little girl who died of a brain tumor in her mother's arms. And I was probably then in my early 30s, and it broke my heart. It was like an egg being cracked. Nothing in my life up to that point had ever shown me those tears existed in me. And it was as if there was a timing in my life when that was going to occur. When that one experience that began in a bookstore, looking for anything other than what I found, I read that one story, and that was a moment when a light went on, and it opened a part of me that had been waiting to open. And that's the point I knew that that was the actual population that I was destined to work with. And everything I'd done prior to that, the cabinet making, industrial engineering, I've done so many different things, they all came into a useful scenario that worked for this actual program. Up to that point, I had no idea what all these different things I'd done were for.
That's the way it happened to me too.
It leads you, and you have to follow
Yeah,
that
you
lead
gotta
and not be
follow it.
afraid to follow that lead.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
You know,
The pieces of the puzzle.
that's exactly right. So that experience by a friend who was wanting to do something before he actually was going to leave this earth
Right.
triggered this course of events and all these other things. And then ultimately, I tracked Kubler-Ross's work. I wanted to read all about her work. I was fascinated by it. Then I needed to meet her. So then I went to a workshop in Northern Ireland when she was doing workshops. At that point, I was living in the home. I bought a motorcycle. I went on my motorcycle to Northern Ireland to meet her. I got to know her and her friends, and that was the connection that ultimately brought me to America to do this work here.
That, they wanted you to do it
Yeah.
here. When I say they, I'm talking about, you know,
Spirit.
your spirit, your
Yeah.
guides, your teachers.
Yeah.
They wanted you to do it here in America.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And you went with the flow. I mean, that when we don't do that, we miss out on so much. We just postpone
Yeah.
Right.
our destiny, you
Right.
know?
Nice way of saying it.
Yeah, it is. And so many people, and myself included, in different times in my life, if you don't listen to that inner voice, you end up regretting it.
A lot of people don't know
Very
how to
much.
hear that inner voice.
Yeah, if they don't
Yeah.
know how, okay, you don't. But if you hear it and you ignore it, you miss out on so
Some
much.
people
That's
just don't
your
know
life's
what
work.
it sounds like.
Yeah, I guess.
Because like you said, you know,
The
crazy world-
noise
the
and the
crazy
noise
world
in the
we
head.
live in.
Yeah, keeping people busy all the time, so they won't be able to do these things. This is not what we're meant for in life.
Right.
We're meant to help one another and love one another and care for one another and grow spiritually until we become what we originally were, divine children of God. Period. That's it. So your work is just fascinating. So you've had all this experience and you started here. So then what did you do when you came here? When you came to America, how did you go about making your plan come true?
Well, sometimes clues are set for you. You know, there's, for example, one of the who became a friend that I met who worked with Kubler-Ross. She lived in Connecticut, and she worked in bereavement, things of that nature. She knew about my work in England, and she was the connector that brought me over here. She introduced me to the Hole in the Wall gang camp, and then I began my path in this country. I came for 3 months, and the 3 months has become 24 years.
Now, can you explain what the Hole in the Wall camp is?
Yeah, it's a fabulous organization.
It's run by Paul Newman, isn't it? Or it was?
No,
Started by
it was
Paul
founded by Paul Newman.
Paul Newman,
Yeah,
that's right.
it's a fabulous organization that cares for children with cancer and other blood-related disorders.
okay.
Yeah, they do amazing work.
So
Yeah.
that's where you were led.
That was part of my journey too. I was meant to spend some time with them, and that was preparation as well for when Dances with Wood began 12 years ago. Then I was like, okay, now it's me. I've had my preparation, I had my training, as it were,
Right.
from the universe, and now it's time to actually follow the next piece for me, which is working directly with children in hospital.
You know, I've told you this before. You remind me of the man Robin Williams played in the movie. What was
Patch
Patch
Adams.
Adams.
Patch Adams.
I know him. I met
You
him.
remind me of Patch
You
Adams
did.
so much. Really?
I love that
I did a
movie.
skit with him.
Oh, really?
Did you really?
We were doing a conference in London 25 years ago, and he was the main speaker. I was the warm-up guy, and
Yeah.
it was about humor and healing. And I had this egg ritual that I did. I said, "There's 2 eggs here, a plastic one and a real one," and I had the audience check to guess which was which. You see, and then he cracked it over my head. So, yeah, which he kind of enjoyed. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll bet you. So, all right, before we go on, because I don't want to run out of time, you want to show us some of the things that you do and what you bring to the children, and then I want to ask you some questions about the children and the experiences you've had. So if you want to show our audience and pick up some of these things and just...
One of the fundamentals to this program, it's a woodworking program, but it's a journey also to a magical place in a child. And the way that it's designed to function is that it doesn't actually need me to do it. It doesn't need an adult.
Okay.
And so what happens is it begins with a journey and a workbook. and this is what they receive. And I've become a caricature. That's the nature of my life now. I'm a caricature in a workbook. But this has allowed me to really reach now 17 different hospitals in 8 states, plus the Dream Builders program, which is in over 20 states. And so this format now, it's like taking me away, put me in a book, and this is what goes to a child, and this becomes the companion to a child. So whilst they're engaged in building a project, such as a race car or a rocket car, what they actually, they begin the journey to build that. It's a reading exercise, it develops cognition, independent learning skills, focus, attention, and it really occupies the child's imagination all the way through it. So every step is designed with pictures and words, and it takes you all the way through it, so you can stop and start it. And there are jokes in the workbook too. I make no excuse, I have a British sense of humor, so there's some pretty bad groaners in there too. But also in the workbook, there are invitations to do drawings, to actually do creative writing. So there are a lot of activities that really promote the creativity in a child, and essentially at the end of it, they also end up with a beautiful wooden project.
That is beautiful.
It really
and
is.
this becomes
The child makes that, huh?
Oh, absolutely right.
Unbelievable.
I don't actually, when I worked with them full time, I didn't actually do a lot. I used to sit in a chair and just witness them. And they get into this process, and then the power of the witness, I think, is really important, because that is a very affirming sense of embrace you offer a child.
Yeah.
And the key to this program is that they do it themselves. They don't need me or an adult to actually help them. And that brings to the end of the experience a certain power, a certain quality of ownership. And I did a presentation for a Rotary Club, a wonderful group of people in the Rotary Clubs about a year ago, and I said, well, I make mirrors. So I held out this piece of wood and I said, what is this? It says, it's a mirror. And it kind of, okay, a mirror, what do you mean a mirror? I said, what happens when a child builds something like this? They sit and they look at it, and it's like a mirror. What they see is something that exists within themselves, a very powerful and beautiful creativity that often they didn't know was even there. So that, in its essence, is a way that I describe this, that they're building a mirror. And when they see themselves looking back at themselves, not only do they see something exquisitely beautiful, often more beautiful than they imagined, they also know that they did it themselves.
Right.
That makes you feel so wonderful.
So there's 2 levels of the power that comes through this process. And then obviously they get to take it home, they get to take the workbook home, and then they get to share these groaner jokes with their families and tell the stories. But even the jokes you see in a hospital situation, it isn't always easy to talk. But you ask a child to tell a joke, you put them into a situation where they have control again. So even the telling of a joke has a power, and it helps them project themselves with humor.
Yeah.
And I think the medical professionals too,
It's one of the best medicine.
and medical professionals too, they have a very hard job. So if a bit of humor now and then, it's a form of medicine to go with it too.
That's right.
Now, is this the packaging?
Well,
of each kit?
one of the questions is, how does a woodworking program function in a hospital?
Exactly.
Well,
So
what
how
I had to do in the early days, I had to sit down and really tune into the hospital environment. And I looked at the meal system. I used to sit with the catering manager at lunchtime and look at all their forms and how the system worked. So I had to design 2 things: a program that first functions for a child in a hospital, the workbook, everything has to be accessible, the tools and everything else. And secondly, you have to design a system to actually fit the program into the hospital culture. It's like when the spaceships meet, they have to dock. And you have to respect the existing systems and the high pressure the hospitals work under. So what I had to do is develop a system that actually could work and fit into their culture. And so essentially they get a sunshine bag, and everything is in here. So what happens is you can give a child a menu, you can do 10 rooms in 10 minutes, menu. You want a race car, you want a box, rocket car. You go back and you drop the whole experience in a bag with a workbook.
Yeah.
Say, hey, bye. 2 hours later you go back and you got a very happy child and very happy parents.
So they start working on themselves without you?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
I'm redundant. I know, that's what's happened to
They
my
are
life.
working with him. He's in the book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know that, but I mean, just that's
Telling his bad jokes.
That's great.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So that's the nature of the program, that we have then 2 systems that really allow the program to function in a hospital. And then you have to create a real vocabulary of different projects to suit different ages of children. Boxes, rocket cars, race cars, I have fire trucks, and a lot of different things that really speak to.
How many different projects do you have?
18, 19 at this point. About 10 up here, just waiting to come
And
through.
you make these kits all by yourself, and you're...
I have some people who help me.
You do.
I have to manufacture all of these by hand. They have to be well sanded, very clean, bagged to a certain standard. You know, so when you make something in wood, I mean, this is now 17, 18,000 kits have gone into hospitals. And touch wood, never a slither, never a problem. They have to be hand sanded, hand cleaned. And you can't actually clean them and leave them overnight because a spider may get in a hole, screw hole. So you have to sand them, clean them, vacuum them, put them straight in a bag and seal them, because these go straight into the hospital. So the standards around manufacture are very high.
Wow.
And I have, you know, local people who come in and actually help me with the
Right.
sanding.
You don't have a
with the
big
drilling.
factory and all that stuff. No, you do that. You're. In your
Well, I have a large
self-
workshop.
workshop, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I work with other non-profits. I have Vista, for example, wonderful organization who actually help. They put the screw kits together and they help in a way too. So I work with other non-profits too whenever I can.
That's wonderful. What else do you have there?
Well, we have the old special box. It can be a memory box, a magic box, jewelry box. This is very popular. There's a box within the box.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
That's the kind of thing. And then we have teddy bear chair.
That's
Every
nice.
teddy bear needs a chair, right?
Exactly.
Definitely.
You know, you can keep your $100
Wow.
bills in there. So
That's really nice.
those are just a few examples of the many different projects.
You have another race car over there, and
Yeah.
There's another car down there.
right.
Now, what kind of wood do you use for these projects?
Pine,
Pine.
number 2 pine, comes from the local timber yard.
Wow, that's so cool.
How do you
Alright.
cope with the emotional challenge of working with seriously ill children?
It comes
How
back
do
to
you do that?
self-care. I think coping is a word that I wouldn't usually, it's like a low bar. You have to do more than cope, I think, and the word self-care comes in. And there's different ways that you self-care. And self-care really essentially is listening to yourself and hearing what it is you need emotionally, and then doing things that actually prevent you from actually getting to an emotional state where it's like carrying a full cup of coffee. You know, sometimes if you're emotionally full and you're not taking care of yourself, you know, just a little nudge and you're full. My perception of how you care for yourself is really proactive in understanding your own emotions and feelings and learning how to express them in the correct way and taking care of yourself. You know, one example is whenever
here's an
possible.
example.
One example is I'd always try and arrive in the car park 5-10 minutes early. Not possible every day, most days. I'd sit and listen to a nice piece of music for a few minutes to really center, to quiet my breath. So I'd walk into the hospital with some sense of peace inside me. And then when you drive away at the end of, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, then you listen for what you're feeling. And whether you go for a walk, whether you go home and journal, you go to relax, or whether you need a movie and a glass of wine, you have to listen for what it is you need and take care of yourself.
So live in the moment and be aware, right? Be aware of yourself. Like
Yeah,
you
and
just
be
said.
very proactive. It's a bit like a bank. If a bank doesn't have any money, they really can't lend money to help other people. And energetically, I think working with children especially, the key is you need to really take care of yourself. So when you're there, you're present and you're full. And you're not engaged with your own needs. And that's, I tell people sometimes when they ask me, I say, the way to help these children is not to try and help the children first and foremost. Take care of yourself first, then you have a lot more to give.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have a couple of very important questions to ask you, but before we go any further, you had told me a story about a boy who made a gun and what he did with that gun out of wood. Right away you think, oh, gun's not a good thing, right? So can you tell the audience that little story?
That's a journey of a child's creativity and responding in a positive way to what that child was calling for. So the backdrop to that is he wanted to build a pirate ship. So
Okay.
we'd been working on a pirate ship for about 4.5 weeks, and he was the captain. And I give him a colouring sheet, and he really takes on the persona of this captain, 7-foot grizzly captain, because art is such a wonderful experience for a child. And so the pirate ship is large, it's cannons, it's very powerful. And this boy had been in isolation for about five weeks now. And so I walked in one day, and he was sitting up in bed. Often he'd be asleep or under his sheets. He was sitting up in bed waiting for me. And he watched me go around the bed, and I sat down, and his big eyes were... He said, "Woody, I want to make a gun." Okay. So it's like, this is new. And I never respond with a no straight away to any child, but you need to listen for what they're really asking for. Okay. So I'm looking at this little boy, and he's looking at me, and I'm seeing my end of life, end of career experience now. It's like it's happening in this 2 seconds. They're coming to take me away. So, but there's also this moment is very powerful on the mother's bedside, and I let go of the experience and try and trust what was happening here. So I asked the mother. I said, "Well, what does chemotherapy do?" It's just a question that came out of me, and she said, and she knew I knew what it did, but she said, "Well, it kills the cancer," and I needed that answer to come from her. And so I said, "Well, what do you want the gun for?" He said, "Well, I don't know. I just want to build a gun." He was a pirate, wanted a gun.
Right.
So I said, "Well, if you actually built a gun, would you be open to using it to kill your cancer?" He said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Well, I'll show you." So that began a journey of using guided visualization. And prior to that, I'd done some with him, because when you build a pirate ship, you have to do a picture of what you can see from the crow's nest looking out around you. So I've been using visualization with him. You close your eyes, you go inside, you breathe them down. What can you see? And are there birds? Are there clouds? Is there the ocean? And then you put it on paper. So this was the journey for him. So, but his mother, she had the final word, and I checked with the hospital personnel too, and they said, "Well, this little boy, whatever he wants to do, this is the only thing he wants to do. If this engages him, we've got to run with it." So he designed the pistol. I went home. Next day I was back with the kit. He built his own pistol, and he had so much fun doing it. So then I said, "So now we need to do a picture of your cancer." So he said, "Well, how do I do this?" So I gave him a sheet of paper. Close your eyes, relaxed him down. I said, "Go inside your body and look for your cancer." So he went inside his body, and he actually did a drawing of leukemia. He did dots in his body, and that was the illness that he had. And then he'd sit in bed every day, and he'd actually, with the gun, shoot it. That's what he used to sit up in bed and shoot it. His dad loved the idea of it. Because they were all very proactive with this. Then he wanted a sword, so we built a sword. And this was a 4 or 5 week journey of this creativity using visualization. This was his medium. I'm not saying it's right for every child. I would never have chosen to do that. That would not have been my choice. However, for him, it was his vocabulary. His parents loved it, and the hospital staff, they rolled with it as well. And after 10 weeks in total of being in isolation, he eventually went home.
Isn't that amazing?
And he was a very healthy boy at the end of that. And
Wow.
his father actually emailed me about 6 weeks after he went home and said, "Mark, Billy is doing really well, and you need to come and visit him." And he said, and underneath the email he put, "Must have been the sword cutting up the cancer." That's an example of how you can use creativity for a child in visualization.
That's wonderful.
Again, it's not everybody's modality, but for this little boy in this setting,
That's perfect.
it worked.
Now, do you have a vision for Dances with Woods?
There's a vision is two things. It's part of what I see in the future of it expanding, hopefully around the country. Part of the vision also is to be able to hear what may also occur as I follow that first part For example, if I'm going to have a vision to cook dinner, I have a vision of going to the supermarket to buy vegetables. I'm driving down the road and I see a market stall over there. I go over, instead of buying a cabbage in the supermarket, I see a garden center and I buy lettuce and carrots and everything else. So I end up with a better dinner than I would have had. And a vision for me is I have an initial vision, but the vision is bigger than what I can see, but I don't know what it is yet. And as you start moving towards it, so you listen and so you're given the clues. So the vision is two things. It's one, I do have a set of concrete ideas that I think should be unfolded. Also, the vision is to really listen for what people are asking for. And that's the dance again. What is needed here?
That's true.
Okay, how about in your original vision, you said that you wanted to provide the program free of charge to children and their families. Now that you have served over 17,000 children, how are you able to support this work?
That's one of the bigger challenges of this work. Most of the hospitals I deal with do not have funding to actually support this work. So it means I, as a non-profit, a 501c3, we have to go out and actually raise funds from caring individuals and foundations, and we write grants. And that's the hardest part of the work, actually, because the vision was always never to have a family pay for this.
Right.
And for the last 12 years, 17,000 families, nobody has ever had to pay for this program.
Wow.
That was always the vision.
That's really great.
So we got to get the word out there.
Do you have any words of inspiration to share with any of our viewers who have a vision that they would like to manifest? And take your time.
From my own perspective, there's many things you could say to this, but love it to begin with. Love it as it is, and hold it in a place that's dear to you.
Your vision.
Yeah, and you need to protect it and be careful who you share it with at what time. But also be wise enough, it's not about changing dramatically how your life is going. For me, I was able to change and move in different ways. Not everybody can do that. Sometimes there are commitments, there are financial commitments, and it's not possible to just drop everything and go and follow your vision. And I think that's the wrong message. But if it's for 1 hour a month, if it's art, piano, creativity, if it's one thing, try and do it just a little bit to start with. Listen for what it is, fall in love with it, and just start very incrementally a relationship with that. And then it'll call you, and life will begin to change for you. And you'll see little invitations here or there. And gently it'll evolve into your life, but it shouldn't be damaging to your balance of your life now. You have to be very attentive to that.
Just don't drop everything and jump into something. Like, just have what you just said, and then look for the signs, look for the doorways, look for the roads, the paths, and things that happen, right? Is that what you mean?
I think some people may need to drop everything,
You think?
It happened to me.
Yeah, I know.
My journey was, I'm done, move on, I'm done, move on, I'm done, move on. Other people, it isn't so easy.
No.
If you have a family and you have responsibilities or elder parents, you have to really honor that part of your life, because that's a part of it too. But maybe find those small windows where you can actually get in touch with that, which is inside you. And I think that's the important thing.
Right.
You mentioned in your program that this, in your program description, that this heals and restores the spirit with the children. And I think you said it's being creative, getting in touch with your creativity, right? For the children, if they don't realize. Are they surprised after that? I mean, they're not like, children are not like us adults. We're looking for reasons for everything all the time. But the children just kind of go with the flow, don't they?
Well, if you want an example of
Yes.
what the actual program does for a child, this occurred probably 8 years ago. I went into work with a boy about 9. He'd been on chemotherapy for a couple of years. He's really been through the mill, and he wanted to build a race car. So I went into his room, and he's sitting in the bed, and I sat next to him and gave him the workbook, and he unfolded this rate book. And he was in a pretty tough phase of his treatment. he was actually on his treatment protocol, and so he stopped every now and then to throw up and stuff like that. It doesn't happen so much these days, but this was a few years ago. And he just pursued this project, and he built this beautiful race car. So the race car is on his table, he's looking at it, and I'm sitting in the bed next to him. Then he painted it. I said probably less than a dozen words. I'm sitting there quietly witnessing this process go on. So after about just over an hour, this beautiful race car has come to life, and it's sitting on his table, and I'm just sitting quietly next to him. And out of the corner of my eye, I can see he starts to nod his head. So then he turns and he looks at me, and I look at him, and there's these big old tears coming down his cheeks. He looked at me and said, "Woody," he said, "I had no idea I could do that." Now, if I'd have said to him, "Go to the window, open the window, jump out, you'll fly," he probably would have done. You know, in the sense that he came to that moment in himself where he suddenly saw how big and how beautiful he was. And that, in a way, is the greatest way to explain what this process does. You know, I mean, I have so much respect for Olympic athletes, but a child in this situation that engages in that kind of process, in that environment, they're on the level of the top performers, and you can't but not have courage. And
We have about 1 minute left.
right.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, 1 minute,
Can you tell us a little about the Dream Builders, which is the offshoot of the dances?
That's an example of when you have a vision and something comes in that steers you. I have a friend who is a social worker in Michigan, and she said, I work with bleeding disorders, but we need to educate them. So together we created this idea around bringing education into the woodworking. So then I founded this new program, Dream Builders, an integrated healthcare education into the actual process. And this summer alone, I have 900 kids enrolled in a program in 8 states.
Good. All right, we have to close right now, but there's certainly a lot more questions and a lot more that you do, and I'm hoping that we can have you come back again. We'll have to talk about that after the show, okay? So we're going to give our viewers your contact information where they can contact you if they want to volunteer or support your work or anything else, okay? So to contact information for Woody Wilkins is Dances with Wood, and it's woody@danceswithwood.org, his email address where you can reach him, and he will answer you. And to learn more information about this show or any of our past shows, please contact us at healOutsideTheBox@yahoo.com, or to reach me, Rosemary Lachance, phone 203-627-7966, or please go on my website, www.rosemarylachance.com, where you'll find all the shows we ever did, all the information, and where it's playing. And to reach Jayne Power,
my phone is 860-664-0174, or my email address is janepower@hotmail.com.
and we're also on Facebook under Healing Outside the Box, where you can go, write messages, leave notes, have a discussion, anything you'd like. Please visit us on Facebook. Okay, our quote for tonight is from our Book of Courage. When you feel sad for others, wanting to alleviate their suffering, remember that nothing happens randomly. It is more like a carefully orchestrated play in which many have chosen to play very dramatic roles in full awareness of their part in the whole. But observe it with compassion and not with indifference. Okay, thank you so much, Woody.
Okay.
Thank you. It was a wonderful show.
Thank you.
Thank you, Woody.
And we'll
My
see you
pleasure.
next time. Good night.
Night. Have a good night.
Good night.
As you look out through the window to the world you have made, always know you are the vision. See the truth, darkness fades.